If you bear with me a few minutes, I forgot my glasses again, so I sent someone to find them. Tonight is the last class we're having this semester, and it's the last section of the Han Shan text as well. So we only have 2 paragraphs left, and we'll finish them up tonight. And this will be the first time in years that I've actually ended something at an end. So it hasn't happened yet, I know. So don't count your characters before they're done. So if we go into tonight's text, we're going to start with "Don't let your thoughts dwell." Just for the run-in, maybe the previous one, you must clearly see through. Remember this from last week? And then the exhortation or admonition, depending on how you look at it, to deal with all states with equanimity. That the states that come up are just that. They're shifting what they call phantoms of consciousness, and that's where the expression slay the Buddha, slay the demon. In other words, don't attach to favorable or unfavorable or high or low states. The key is to develop equanimity, which is actually another translation for samadhi. Samadhi, sometimes people translate as a state of focus, concentration, or absorption that you enter into and leave, but a more, I would say, lasting or better definition of samadhi is a state of equanimity that you don't enter into or leave, but is constant. And this comes from not pulling away from reality and denying it, but rather seeing things really as they are at all times. And when you see clearly things as they are at all times, then the ups and downs don't happen, because all conditioned dharmas are like dreams, illusions, bubble shadows, they're passing. And so equanimity is actual, a natural state, if you want to see it that way, of being in touch with things as they really are and being in touch with the true mind. So it's the equanimity that's being sought here. And within that equanimity, the way just moves. You move along in the way, it says, one of the expressions is, from wonder to wonder, awakening happens. Then we go to the next. Here is his last 2 exhortations. He says, don't let your thoughts dwell on the past, or past regrets, or future plans. Don't be timid. I'll read the whole thing. You must set your mind on a direct, unwavering course. Square your shoulders and move forward. This is to convey the sense of resolve. Your assurance, and we played with this translation, and again when you see slash or parentheses, it's still something we're tweaking. Stateliness, sometimes inner majesty or gravitas, will naturally shine forth, this natural solidity of presence. And it's not a cockiness and it's not a hubris, but it's a real sense of being grounded, and you're grounded in your nature. And at that point, there's no more fighting, no more contending, there's nothing you want, there's nothing you're afraid of. You're really in the fullness of your being. And it says, with deluded thoughts no longer ensnaring you, you will soar aloft like an unshackled or untethered eagle. This is a beautiful, almost poetic passage. I don't know, of course, I have my students who say, I never saw an eagle, so I have no idea what this is talking about. I've never seen a cow or a dog, donkey or whatnot. Any of you ever see an eagle soar aloft? Yeah, a few people have, yeah. It's quite something to behold. In Maine, right where I'll be going this summer again, right on the edge of our point, there's a tall tree, and usually that's where the baby eagles get born every 2 years or so. And then they hang around on that nest for quite a while before they're ready to go. But on the day that they make their first flight, all cacophony breaks out in the forest. There's this exultation announcements that they give, which is part joy and delight that they're flying, but also part total fear that they might fall. So they're just squawking and squealing as they set forth, and the parents are all hyped, and then all the other birds and animals start getting all excited too because they know that something's going on. But when they take off from that nest, and then they just soar. And you really feel this sense of what the passage here is conveying. They are free of the nest. And here we can use this as a metaphor, the nest of confused thinking, of deluded thinking. When the deluded thoughts no longer ensnare you, you soar aloft. And this is a wonderful passage too, because it's conveying the intrinsic naturalness of the awakened state. It's not something that you get. It's almost like released, you naturally rise unencumbered. So it's not even almost like a helium balloon without a string. The tendency of the balloon is to want to go upwards, release the string, and it goes by itself. You don't have to blow it upwards. The nature, the essential nature, Zixing, wants to strive for purity and stillness, wants to be awakened. And simply by taking off the deluded thoughts and the bad habits and afflictions, it just naturally goes up by itself. So this is a beautiful image using the eagle. Day and night, at all hours, in any situation, you won't tie yourself up or stumble. Your inherent light ease will emerge as you attain great self-mastery. For the beginner, this will be the first confirmation that your practice is working. So, going back, again, he's talking about disentangling the mind from, and he's went through a series of things. One of the things he goes through is disentangling your mind from seeking or wanting anything, any inconceivable state or far out state. Let go of all that kind of seeking. Also, get rid of all the states of mind that arise, fears, anxieties, longings, desires, and so forth. This is the deluded mind. But also he's saying here, part of that is to get your mind out of the artificiality of past and future. And this is critical too. So we've actually interpolated here, it literally is just past and future, but you can say past regrets, future, let's see. And here the word is calculate. So when you calculate, it's can be regrets or plans, either way. But the calculation is you're working in what might have been, what could have been, maybe what should have been, and then you're working at what might be, what could be, what should be. But it's all not here and now. And so the time that's wasted in this, he's saying, is where, in fact, you're tying yourself with deluded thoughts, even in clinging to that kind of conceptualizing or that kind of calculating. And this is a very, very difficult mental process to first even recognize that we're doing it. And then to, once you recognize it, to stop, because it'll drive you crazy. It literally is what the six-page chart calls the frantic passage through life. And this frantic passage is this sense of past regrets, unfulfilled desires, or so forth, and then future. There's a little verse that's really maybe says this. I'll give it to you. The past is never where you left it. And this is the first line. The past is never where you left it. I'll give you all three. The future is never where you get to. And the present is never where you are. Okay? So if you go back, the past is never where you left it. And this is referring to, you can't go back. It's not where you left it. You go back to where you think it was, and it's not there anymore. It's really funny. I mean, whether you're talking about going back to your homeland, going back to a country, going back to a relationship, going back to a situation, the day after the party, you go back. It's never where you left it, and because everything moves and changes and moves on. But it's also never where you left it, because you who are going back are not the same either. So you can't go back to that exact state of mind and emotion and feeling you were in at that point. So not only is the The place, if you want to use that language, not accessible. You are not the same person. And so it's irreversibility. It's a concept of irreversibility. You cannot go backwards. Okay? And then the future is never where you get to. That's a little funny, but what it means is that you're thinking now, you're imagining, say in the last 45 minutes during the sit, some of you might have, for a few seconds, wandered into future thought. And so you imagine something tomorrow, next week, next year, down the road. And you actually do, we're pretty good at this. We create narrative plays around this. And then we're, of course, starring in the play. The action's all around us. And we project forward what this is going to be like, what we want it to be like, what we think it's going to be like, what we're sure we're going to make it to be like. And we're going to put a lot of energy into making this. And then when you get to it, it isn't quite that. Now, some of you have had this experience. Sometimes I remember the first time I got on a plane and I was told I was going to someplace. And in my mind, I imagined what that someplace would be. Even where the sun would rise and set, I had a sense of direction. I had a sense of color. I had a sense of temperature about this place. And it wasn't like that at all. And then the people that I anticipated, this aunt and uncle that I'd never met, I had also in my future plans, they were this and this and this, and they weren't like that at all. And so it wasn't when I got there, it wasn't where I got to. I got to someplace else. So the future is never where you get to, could mean simply that. There's no way that you can account for and control all the variables that go into making this next event. Even as you try and really desperately work on it, you can't. But it also means the you, again, that made the plan, okay, so you're sitting here tonight and you're saying next week or next year, I'm going to be so-and-so. And I'm going to be at this stage in my practice, and I'm going to meet so-and-so, and we're going to be happy, and blah, 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 blah. But the one that's making the plans right now is not the one that'll get there. Because in between now and when you get there, you will change. And so, you know what I'm saying? So even if, you could say, I'm going to stay the same, and then I'm going to get there, and wow, it's party time, you're going to change in between. You're going to have some experience that may make you doubt, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good plan. Then you adjust the plan a little bit. But it keeps shifting, so you never quite get there. And when you get there, you're never the same person that set out. And so the last line, the present is never where you are, is really sort of right. Because if you're always looking backwards and always looking forward, what's left of the present is shrunken down to almost non-existent. And for most of our time, we spend it in thoughts of emotions about feelings, reminiscences about the past, or fantasies about the future, or fears and so forth. So it's like this tendency is really, really hard. And the problem is, even if you want to try your best to be in the present, where is the present? See, this is the other part of it. So I mean, I hate to pull the rug and say, like we had a book in the 60s, Be Here Now. That was the big, hot, spiritual book that came out in the 60s. And yeah, that sounded cool, be here now. But how do you be here now? Because here, now, is also in flux. Where is the here now that you can actually pin down and grab? As soon as you say here, it's already gone. As soon as you say now, it's already over. And so, where is the here and now that you're going to get at? So we think of time as some measure of movement through space. That's how I learned it when I was in college. Time is a measure of movement through space. And that sounded really solid. And then in next class, you realize you learn that everything's moving. So if everything's moving, where is the measuring point of movement in space? Even the measurer is moving. And then you get to Einstein, it's like the relativity of time and space. You go, I see it. So everything's moving, and that's how fast or slow it's moving is completely relative to your position of what you're moving in relation to everything else, and there's nothing that's not moving. So there's no place you can nail down and say this is here, now, present. Wow. So, I don't know. When I was a kid, I always liked to try to wrap my mind around this, and I never could. I can never wrap my mind around these very simple things. What's time? What's space? Where does it begin? Where does it end? I used to drive my teachers crazy. Quickly, I ended up in the back of the room. And this was just ordinary questions. When I started asking about religion, I got kicked out. So it's like I wasn't even in the room anymore. But there's this wonderful poem that some of you might know. I like to share sometimes poetry. And this is by Robert Frost, a New England poet. But he writes of this idea. He's out for a walk one day, and there's two roads that are going down. He's walking along, and all of a sudden the two roads diverge. And he doesn't know which one to take. And so he's contemplating. I'll read you the poem. I was going to send it, but just close your eyes and read it. So two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not be one traveler. And sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. So he said two roads diverged in this light and lovely woods, but I could not travel both. I couldn't be one traveler and travel both. So long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in an undergrowth. So he kind of standing there looking, well, that's going. So he's looking into the future. Then I took a look at the other one. It was just as fair, just as lovely, and having perhaps the better claim. It was more drawn to that one because it was grassy and wanted wear, meaning nobody had gone down that one, or very much. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them pretty much the same. So it's like the sense of which road do I take? These are the two roads that diverge. So it has to do with any choice or any decision you're making, to come tonight, to not come tonight. Two roads diverge. I come tonight, I don't come tonight. Going out, going here, they look about the same. You know, what's the difference? You don't know at the onset. And he says, both that morning equally lay in steps no leave, in leaves no step had trodden black. So those of you who walk in the woods know in the fall, if you walk over the leaves, they get mushy and then they turn black. But when they're first falling and no footprints on them, they're just lying there, undisturbed. And he's saying, basically, I don't have any way to know which way to go. Both are laying there and they're both virgin and open. And here's the line I want to stress. Oh, I kept the first for another day. So he took the second one. But he kept the first for another day, meaning kept. He held on to the first for, I'll walk that one another day. Now here's where you get to the existential dilemma of the poem. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. And this line is knowing how way leads on to way, not just the way he's walking, but the step that I take. I'm going to be a different person with each step. And knowing how way leads on to way, I will never come back to this juncture again, because even if I come back to it, I won't be the same person. And it's likely I won't come back to that junction. You know? So, and then the poem ends, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, the question is, I shall be saying this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, looking back. Now, the question from you, reading this poem, is it a sigh of regret or a sigh of satisfaction? Anyhow, or both. Could be, or just a sigh. In any event, the exhortation that Han Shan's giving us is really telling us to be real in the sense that the past, the future, are not things that are accessible. They're not things we can get at, yet most of our chi or energy is worried or wasted worrying or calculating about those. And even trying to get something in the present moment is elusive. And this isn't just Buddhist, this is actually quite scientific. Most of the people I talk up to who are scientific friends of mine assure me that this way of thinking is not reflected in science. This way of thinking about a past, present, and future. The equation of physics just tell us this isn't how it works. And cognitive psychology also tells us it's not how it works. That past, present, and future is a framing that we do with a conscious process, but it's a manipulation. It's a framing of something to give us a sense of satisfaction, a sense of I'm here and this is happening and so forth. But in reality, it doesn't conform to how things are going and flowing. So there is no sense here of past, present, or future. Now this is, our minds resist this, but our minds resist it to the degree to which we resist reality. And so we construct these things, and we can get very obsessive about past, present, and future, to the point of becoming neurotic about it, when in fact it's a complete projection of the mind that wants to have and hold and keep. And it doesn't. And so at the time, one of the reasons why the process of dying becomes so anxiety-producing, and Doug was talking to me today about his father, who, as his father is getting closer to dying, is getting more anxious. And the anxiety arises because the construction, and I'm being descriptive, I'm not judgmental, it would be of all of us. The anxiety arises because that construction is dissolving before one's eyes. And so there's this franticness of trying to hold on to time and space, me as an entity existing within, and nothing in the process of the deterioration of the skandhas and so forth hold that. And so literally everything that has been constructed is dismantling before one's consciousness. And so if you, at that point, if you haven't spent some time really investigating and meditating and getting beyond what the conscious constructs are, it can be a very anxiety-producing shock at that moment. And it's universal. It's not like, oh, you've been good, we'll let you avoid that. You know, here's your heaven, you're going to, you know, make sure you break your toothbrush. You know? No, everybody's going to get hit with it. It's a universal reality. And so preparation for that, I mean, that's what Plato and Socrates both felt, that philosophy was nothing more than preparing you to face this. That was the goal of philosophy. It wasn't to necessarily have transcendental wisdom, but it was to face death squarely with your shoulders squared and with some equanimity and poise about it. But if you didn't think about it, it was certainly going to come. Yes?
Do you think this is related to like incessant busyness?
Say what?
Incessant busyness and like how it seems to be getting worse. The busyness, you know, and just that we can't even remember what it's like not to be busy.
Well, actually, I think you're onto something. If you go back to the Buddha's psychology, and he's saying most activity, most karma, most of our busyness is driven by Ming. It's driven by avidya. It's driven by a kind of misperception. You can translate it as ignorance. I think that's really too pejorative. I think that's more like it's driven by this misunderstanding of things as they really are. And because we misunderstand, then we start to feel an anxiety and we become busy. And the busyness is both to fill the void of having to face what we've just been talking about, but it's also based on the illusion that you can beat this. If you're busy enough and you put enough things together and you construct enough things and you make enough plans and get the insurance policies and everything, you'll actually beat impermanence. You'll beat mortality. And there's some people that write, some historians of culture, who write that this is, to some degree, on a psycho-historical way, if you're prone to that kind of thing, the engine that drives modern civilization is this drivenness, not only to be busy, but with the idea that you will actually overcome the natural tendencies towards atrophy and mortality. And so that, for example, the scientific, technological thrust, right? Someday, some guy in that white coat, or some girl or gal, as my sister would say, some scientist will come up with a solution to mortality. And so it's become a sort of alternate God. Instead of wishing to be born eternally in some heaven beyond, we've now changed that technology into the hopeful wish that we will be avoiding our own demise. And so that the idea is that drives it is this longing to be free of that. So it's a busyness plus it's a promise of beating the odds. And even if you look at why the planet is so overheated, what is the frantic consumption of all the resources driven by? Not need. It's driven by this insatiable nervousness, anxiety, And so if you look at it in a very real way, that mind is actually burning up the planet. It's not that the planet's burning up on its own, but there's a relationship between the material and the consciousness. And that consciousness is actually driving most of the problems we feel. And again, what is a solution? It's not to calm the mad mind. It's to find better ways to tap those resources. And then we'll get rockets and we'll go out and get all the resources on the other planets out there. So, so that mind unleashed will never cool down, and the planet won't cool down if that mind doesn't cool down. And that mind can't cool down unless it stops. Stops. Remember I don't know if some of you know this story. It's a story about Angulimala. The name of the story, Angulimala, who's a serial killer, and was one of the Buddha's disciples. Well, after he changed his ways, of course, and then he became. But before that, he was a serial killer, and he wanted to get the Buddha and add it because he used to carry little bones, I think ear bones or something. I forget what it was. He had his fingers. Angulimala, because of the fingers. So he would take the digit of somebody killed and make it into a nice, Cartier necklace, and. So he wanted to get the Buddha, and the Buddha saw what he was doing. So the Buddha uses his spiritual powers. When Angulimala would step towards him, the Buddha would be backing up. And he'd keep coming, and the Buddha keep going back. And he could never get to him. He had his knife drawn and everything. He couldn't get to him. And finally he says, "Will you stop?" And the Buddha says, "I've stopped. Why are you going? Why do you keep going?" And at that moment, Angulimala realized he was talking about his mind was not stopped. He wasn't at peace. He was driven by this, whatever that was, causing him to kill. And he really had an awakening at that moment. So this idea of stopping means stop that mad mind, because it's going to drive you crazy. It's going to wreck the world. And at the end, you're going to end up empty-handed and bitter anyhow, because it won't produce anything. So, if you're really into changing the world, I know it's a long-term project here, and it's not as immediate as, soliciting Congress to do something, but changing the mind, changing consciousness that's driven by this insatiable greed is probably the most profound and lasting way to make the change. And that's why I would say probably in the Buddhist sense, this sense of time does not apply. The Buddhist sense would say this is an illusion. The past, present, and future are illusory things you can't get at to. Because they're driven by the self and the clinging. On the other hand, there is a measure, I would say, and I say this tentatively, there is a measure of time in Buddhism that is considered to be change. So time is a measure of change, but it's a change of consciousness rather than a changing of the material conditions per se. When you change consciousness, when you cultivate and change your consciousness, by some measure, something then changes in a spectrum over whatever that measure is. There's an expression, the sea of suffering, the sea of dukkha is vast, but the change of mind is the other shore. In other words, the only way to make any dent on the time-space continuum is a change in consciousness. And that's the only thing. Karma doesn't have time. Karma just flows like the river. It just keeps going on and on and on. It doesn't have time. So whether it's now or in the present or some future lives, there's no time to it. It's just the playing out of cause and effect. And so if you change cause, you change effect. And if you change and transform, you actually change consciousness. That's the only measure of change. So it's a really interesting, so while we're worrying about the past and the future, the only real thing is the changing of consciousness right now in what you think, what you do, what you say, in the three karmas. And by doing that, you actually make a change in the trajectory of your destiny or whatnot, if that makes sense. That's why it says, my teacher would write a book, say, the 10 Dharma realms are not beyond a single thought. Meaning the 10 dimensions of reality over the vast expanse that's immeasurable time and space do not go beyond one thought of consciousness, not a shifting consciousness. That's the only thing that measures it. And there's a really interesting expression In the Avatamsaka, it says, when you bring forth the Bodhi mind, Fa Puti Shin, when you bring forth that Bodhi mind, that seed and the fruit of Buddhahood happens then. That is it. Now, is there some, quote, time between? Yes, but it's not relevant because the consciousness has already shifted. And once that consciousness has shifted, then it's not a measure of time. It's just a measure of karma, whatever. But that says, at that moment, Buddhahood is realized. And it can only make that statement if it's talking about a dimension of change that is only coming from consciousness alone. So this is really interesting. Anyhow, no, I got 10 minutes. And I'm treating everyone in pizza if I don't finish. So here we go, being stingy. In some ways, the principles I describe here are no more helpful than drawing feet on a snake, which you all understand. So last night we're translating this, we're going, huh? I'm going, huh? Drawing feet on a snake, what's that about? So we kind of got the gist of it, but then I saw some back and forth today on emails from people in the class last night. So who's going to tell the story? What's the story? It's an idiom, but can you tell it?
Franklin can share. Stacy.
Oh, no. Okay, come on. Tell the story.
Once upon a time.
Oh, that's okay.
Long time ago in China, in a very rich family, and one day the owner wants to treat their servant. They want to reward because they work very hard, and they want to reward them a pint of wine.
A jug of wine.
A jug of wine. So, but there are many servants, not one, right? So those servants just discuss who should provide the wine. Yes. So, and one servant came out this idea that, okay, let's compete through what they can, who can draw the best snack. The best snack.
Draw a picture of a snake. Who can do the best drawing? Okay.
But has to be perfect.
Has to be perfect and has to be fast.
Right. And then there's one person draw very fast, and when he finished, he looked wrong. Nobody finished. Nobody faster than him. So he started to think, okay, since no one's finished, I was the number one. I should just eat something on the neck. So he drew some feet on the neck, and then there's another person saying that no, that's not the snack. Because snack
Doesn't have feet.
doesn't have feet. So you lose the contest.
And he lost the wine.
Yes. So down with the story. The story behind the draw feet on the snack. Sorry for that. Yeah. Done.
So Han Shan is saying here, whatever I've done before, this whole stuff I wrote before is basically just drawing feet on a snake. It's extraneous, superfluous. What would you find? You found something from...
I said it reminded me of gilding the lily, the English expression, which then I was going back to find, because Yvonne was saying, well, isn't gilding the lily making something that's perfect even more perfect? But it turns out that the expression comes from Shakespeare, who in a play about King John, where apparently King John had already been crowned, and then he decided he wanted another coronation. So someone lectured him and said, you being crowned again is like, and actually Shakespeare didn't say gilding the lily, he said, gilding refined gold, or painting a lily, or smoothing over ice, or throwing perfume on a violet.
This is wonderful.
Wasteful and excessive.
So painting a lily, that's wonderful. I'm painting a flower, so the flower's already there, but you're going to paint it and try to make it more beautiful. Oh, okay. So you think those are equivalent?
Pretty simple.
Okay. Gilding a what? Gilding a lily or drawing feet on a snake. You choose your metaphor. Did you find it?
Yeah, I thought it was
Gilding the lily is what it said. It's our mistake.
Gilding a lily is the way. Yeah.
It's to gild refined gold. I mean, I could read the whole Shakespeare, but we only have 5 minutes. Yeah,
Right. I better get going here. Okay. Lest we gild the sentence. They are just expedient words, not ultimate truth. nor the Dharma itself. So he's saying everything I've told you was a provisional, expedient method or device, a clever device, a skillful device to get you into the right orientation so that you yourself begin to cultivate and understand things directly for yourself. All dharmas are fangbian. All dharmas are immediate expedients or rafts to get you to the other shore. Whatever gets you to the other shore is a dharma. Okay? If it doesn't get you to the other shore, it's not dharma. You may find yourself traveling down many wrong roads. And it's the same expression, off an inch at beginning, off 1,000 miles in the end. If you're launching a rocket and the rocket is not dead on, the longer it goes out, the further away it's going to go from its target. Here he's talking about make sure that when you set out, you have, even though these are expedient devices, you have the method down firm. This we were talking about last week. Otherwise, you'll waste your time and effort because you'll be going down many wrong roads. Make sure your practice is genuinely leading you toward the path of wondrous awakening. When your steps are true and straight and true, you can move as swiftly as the wind, traversing aeons in one day. This is really a beautiful expression. Going back to, again, the time-space thing we were just talking about. You're traversing aeons, meaning millions and millions of years, if you want to use that, in a day. Why? Because consciousness now is oriented. And when consciousness is oriented and undiluted, it's unencumbered. And so it just moves quickly as the wind, it says. The path to becoming a Buddha cannot be measured in length. Again, Buddha is a state of mind, not a state of state, not a location. The Pure Land is a pure mind. The Pure Land is not some distant planet or galaxy. I suppose NASA could get interested in finding Amitabha's Pure Land and do a launch, but as long as the people on there didn't have straight minds, they would go right past it, even though it existed out there, because they wouldn't be able to recognize it. Interesting. Anyhow, so the path to becoming a Buddha cannot be measured in length. Although, and we wrestled with this quite a bit last night, this last line. Although these are just beginner's expedients, you could sort of, this consists of a beginner making up or begins with this expedient. Or you could say, although we're talking about a beginner's expedient, you must start from here to become a Buddha, to have the accomplishment, the duh. So, on one hand, it could seem like he's being humble. Well, what I just said to you was very ordinary stuff and don't. But on another, it's very profound because he's saying, any teaching I give you is only an expedient to get you from one shore to the other. You yourself have to do that. And then it's a useful expedient otherwise. And he said, although we say all dharmas are empty, ultimately they are. You can't get to there except by using them. So they're a means to an end, but not the end in itself. So he's kind of, at this point, saying, you might wrongly conclude, oh, if there's no principles that are ultimate, and there's no dharma that's ultimate, and Buddhahood is intrinsic and whole, I'm here. And he's saying, no, you're not, because you actually have to go through the dismantling and untangling of the bad habits and faults and for it to manifest. So, although it's necessary, when you really arrive, you don't keep the Dharma any more than you keep the raft once you're going over to the other shore, but you still need the raft to get across the water. And so it's a kind of, it's necessary but not sufficient sort of thing. And so that's the end. And I have 3 minutes left even. So I'll pause here and say we'll finish this. Next year, we're going to meet as a group in Polysys and hopefully get it to a point where it could be published. Because I think it's a wonderful, short little essay for beginners.
Thank you all.
Yeah, let's see who's here. So everybody who's here has to take a nod. Let's go. So it's Iwan. Can you raise your hand? She just told the snake story.
Wonderful.
Yeah, just say, you're part of this mess. Yeah. And Stacy was part of this mess. And Ilona was part of this mess. And Suzanne was part of this mess. Let's see, who else?
Almost everyone.
Not almost everyone. Tina, you contributed to this mess. Where's Alan?
Alan, Locke.
Oh, there they are. They're back there, right. That's more or less been the stalwart group that's contributed. We meet every Thursday night and work our way through this. And it's actually quite a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I never knew about a snake with feet before, among other things. So now I can tell this to my little, grandnieces and whatnot. You about the snake, and then at Maine this summer we'll draw snakes with feet. And I'm sure I'll send some of the pictures back. Okay, so that's it. We'll start up again next semester. I'm not sure exactly what the starting date is.
Usually it's after Labor Day, but we'll email everyone, we'll put it up on the bulletin board.
And I'm thinking, starting next semester, of, in a sense, going back, even though I said you can't go back. And of course, if we go back, we won't be going back, because if we won't. But maybe we just finished a new, very thorough translation of the Platform Sutra, the Sixth Patriarch Sutra. And it has the same energy and spirit of this. So I thought we could start that one again on Friday night and go through the new translation and see where we go on that. So that'll be starting in the fall again. And of course, we'll start with beginning instruction on meditation, sitting meditation again, and then use the Sixth Patriarch Sutra as a sort of beacon. So, announcements. Announcements? You're not going to do an announcement even though I asked you to do an announcement?
Okay.
Yeah, and I asked you to do an announcement. Are you two going to do an announcement? Yeah, two of you. So come up and face the crowd. Now you know what it's like every Friday night. I look out on this ravenous mob.
So, Angela's not here, I was looking for her. But Marty asked us to talk a little bit about DRBU. I'm wearing a sweater t-shirt, actually. Today. I didn't plan for this. But, about, I would say, Dharma Buddhist University is affiliated with the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery as well as the main campus.
Can you get to the microphone?
Can I get the microphone? Is it okay? Can you hear? Okay, anyway, so we want to talk briefly about the university. Actually, what Marty did tonight, it gives a really good flavor of what this project is all about. In a sense, we are proposing a higher education that put more emphasis and focus on looking at very important questions, raising important questions, using materials not just from the Buddhist tradition, but also from other classical traditions in the world. And the classes will be smaller, so there will be more interactions and discussions, but the spirit is very similar. And because the more foundational thing about looking at the world is about looking at the mind of people. So that's kind of where the attention is focused. So we have recently started 2 programs. One of them is a Bachelor of Liberal Arts, and another one is a Master of Arts in Buddhist Classics. And beginning in 2010, we started the effort to get these programs accredited formally by the regional accreditation body, which we're in the Western region. So the body, the agency's name is WASC. So we have recently gone through the preliminary stages of accreditation, and we're working toward becoming formal. And that timeline is coming up really soon. In order for us to be accredited, we do have to have people in classes going. So, and I'm here. So the bachelor program is a regular. It's a regular 4-year Bachelor of Arts program in liberal arts, and it's conducted in a model that study primary text that has seminar-style classes, small seminar-style classes, residential college. They'll be reciting on campus in Ukiah at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. The Master of Arts focus more on the Buddhist classics, but it's still going to be more seminar-style classes focusing on primary text. There will, for the undergraduate, there will also be math and sciences, as well as looking at other classical tradition. The masters more focused on the Buddhist materials. So if anybody here interested or know other people who might be interested, college-age students, people who want to go back to school, thinking about a master's degree, please direct them to our website. It's www.drbu.org, or talk to Marty or anybody here. Okay. Yeah?
Stacey, you want to say something? Yeah, no, you gotta hold the banana.
But I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
want.
go ahead.
So Marty wrote this, and it's very inspiring. So I want to point this, and everybody can read about it. But this really captures the essence of our school, I think. And I'll just read the first paragraph, just so that people know what we're about, our spirit and our core value. Dharmaram Buddhist University, founded in 1976, is a small private school dedicated to liberal education in the broad Buddhist tradition. A tradition characterized by knowledge in the arts and sciences, self-cultivation, and the pursuit of wisdom. DRBU aims at educating the whole person and thus strives to nurture individuals who see learning as lifelong endeavor in the pursuit of knowledge, self-understanding, and the creative and beneficial applications of that learning to every sphere of life. So this kind of gives you an idea of what we're about, and I feel like for more information, you guys can look on the internet. And if you know any students who are looking for this kind of education, please point them to us. Yeah.
And it's not gonna be online, digital, long distance.
Right.
And classes are held in Ukiah?
Ukiah, yeah. So the many people who are here who are actually involved in the project, Stacy, myself, Jason and Ken, Angela, Justice, who many of you know, will come through. She's actually she actually leads our recruiting effort. Jing Chuanshi here helps out with many things. Also, we are, as I said, we are really close. Well, hopefully very close to becoming accredited. But we do need students, and so we have a rolling admission, which means that we don't have a deadline. We have missions throughout the year. So even if people who are thinking start going this fall, we'll be really happy to talk to you, give you more information, and entertain applications for the fall. And regular semester, yeah, fall starts in, I think, August 19th or 20th this year, and the spring semester starts in late January. What we have is an integrated curriculum for both semesters with undergraduate. It's all required and sequentially built, which means that there's no transfer. You have to start as a freshman or a first-year graduate student, and you go through the whole curriculum, and you come up with, everybody takes the same class.
One of the key elements that we incorporated, though, is, like Friday night here, we sit for 45 minutes, then we do the text. Because by sitting, calming your mind for 45 minutes, you actually get an insight into the text you wouldn't get if you're just reading it on BART or picked it up. And so we're arguing that the contemplative method, sitting in meditation, quieting the mind, is one of the tools that you use for understanding text. And so it's built into the curriculum. So contemplative exercises are part of just learning the languages and so forth. It's part of the tools used to understand the text, is to better understand yourself. So there's this dialogue going on with your own cultivation and penetrating the text. And we got to the stage where this model has been accepted by the accrediting body, which is a first. This has never been before. And maybe they didn't realize what they did, but that's okay. It's done. We made a successful case that you can't understand Buddhist text because they're primarily spiritual documents without fathoming and using your own spirit to get at them. They're spiritual texts that have to be fathomed by the spirit. And without fathoming the spirit, you're not going to get the text. So they went for it.
Sorry. Sorry, just a couple of things I forgot about Yihuan. Yihuan is very involved with our designing our program also. But unfortunately, because we're not accredited yet, we cannot issue international visa to international students. So for those people who are from another country, in a couple years, hopefully we can be of service. But we do have a lot of financial packages available for students, so that your overall cost of attendance will be very reasonable and affordable at the stages of our development. So again, go to our website, ask us questions, submit application, talk to people who might be interested. We have a full-out recruiting effort for the fall of 2015 or even fall of 2014 right now. Angela is
Consist of more than people with T-shirts.
Yes, right. But we're still looking for people for this fall of 2014. So really, we welcome any leads and information and inquiries.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Is that a residential campus? And if so, do students get fed vegan food?
It is so that the undergraduate program is residential program required to stay on campus. The graduate program, you don't have to stay on campus. But if you are on campus, the meal plan is with the rest of the assembly, so it is the vegetarian meals. Yeah.
Okay, any,
I have a question. Why among some of the classes here in Berkeley, that does belong to the drama people, but I'm sure you probably consider that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the whole question.
she's asking why the classes aren't in Berkeley, or some of the classes.
Well, because that's partly to do with accreditation issues. Because if we were to have, by the virtue that the Berkeley and UCI is 100 miles away instead of 40 miles away, if we were to have classes here in Berkeley, we'll have to start a whole new campus, and we'll have to start a whole new accreditation. Okay, so it will be very difficult for us to do that. Although we recognize the benefit of having activities in Berkeley.
You guys can tell that Frank was in charge of accreditation.
Okay, so if you're interested, somebody's interested down the line, think about it. For many different reasons. You could do worse than going back to school. And you could do worse than getting even a bachelor's degree in this area, in terms of having a broad liberal arts background that would make you eligible to do all kinds of things in the world. Thinking that if you get a degree in engineering or science, you're equipped for life, is indeed a myth. So in any event, think about it. Other announcement, Hung Shu's back from Australia.
Hung Shu came back.
And?
And he'll be lecturing tomorrow.
Okay, so Avatopsica lectures begin tomorrow.
He'll be back from Australia. And
Any other announcements? Any other announcements?
Yes, there is this is the second announcement for the Buddha Farm retreat coming. This is the second time I think we showed this here. We're going to have another camping meditation retreat this summer at Buddha Farm. It's July 6th to July 12th. Reverend Han Shan will be leading it, and the topic will be the Buddha Dharma and Western values and exploration of the six guidelines. It will be a camping outdoor retreat, so it will be rustic. And
The bears are all vegetarian.
so the last time I didn't announce the website, and it's actually quite important because you can't find a link. It's oregon.berkeleymonastery.org. There's no ... in front. So, and I know several of you guys have already registered. We'll try to get back to you like this week in terms of your confirmation. We're kind of behind in getting back to people's email. So there are some slideshows and music videos of the past year's retreat. It's a beautiful place. I don't know if people who have, how many of people here have been to Oregon? Yeah. Oh, sorry, the retreat. But I think it's a very beautiful place. There's no cell phone reception, no internet.
Which is one of the benefits. It's not so much what you'll be doing up there, it's what you're not doing up there. You'll be unplugged for 7 days.
So you have to like talk to people, the person next to you. Meditate, like enjoy nature, listen to the birds. So, okay. I think Locke, you want to add anything?
Yeah, this is the what number retreat? How many have you done?
11th year.
Oh my God.
11th year. Yeah.
I have been coerced in presenting
Peonies.
flowers.
The epitome of impermanence.
Should we paint them?
Yeah, I was just thinking with a paintbrush, I can do wonders with that. I must say, even though I shouldn't say, I'm actually quite fond of peonies, so this is wonderful.
They will last 3 days.
3 days?
That's it. If they were in the garden.
Well, I last 3 days to enjoy them.
Oh, you'll change by then.
Right. All of you, please have a good summer, and partly I will recommend what I recommended last summer. If you do nothing else, try to unplug a little. Try to get destimulated as much as you can, and just in doing that, you will actually find your Buddha nature faster. So if you can spend some of the summer outside, some of the summer slowing down, having tea with people, going for walks more, and getting away from all the devices, you've done yourself a great favor. You've increased your lifespan, your health, and your Buddha roots will grow. And then if you go to Oregon besides that, you're going to come back all looking like peonies. So see you in the fall. We'll do a transference now.
May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the three jewels.
Keep writing poetry. Good. It's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my first degree.
You're what?
I got a degree in writing.
You did?
Yeah.
Ah.
So.
And now you can actually begin
Now
doing it.
now I can do it. After years of working for government, it's like, well, I can't wait till everything. Oh yeah, I'll stop work and then I'll write.
Many of the famous Chinese poets either simultaneously were government bureaucrats or in being bounced out and retiring, they began writing their poetry.
Oh, I was bounced out and
And
retired.
their